All right, this next slide, numbers 7 through 11, ask us to write the equation that represents the following transformations. Here's the general equation at right. Y equals a sine of b times x minus h plus k. And cosine would be the same thing, but with just cosine instead of sine. We did 7 in class, but we'll do it again. A cosine function with an amplitude of 0.5 units and shifted right pi over 2 units. So our a value here is 0.5. Shifted right, that's horizontal, so h is pi over 2. There's no mention of period or of vertical shift or midline, so we won't plug anything in for those values. We'll assume that those are just standard values, and then it is cosine. So for number 7, our equation is y equals 0.5 cosine x minus pi over 2. Again, I plugged in a and I plugged in h, but I'm not plugging in anything for b or for k because there was no information given for those. Okay, number 8 is next, a cosine function that has been reflected over the x-axis. Reflected means it's negative. We'll assume it's -1. Then shifted left, pi over 3 units. Shifted left is still horizontal, but now negative since it's to the left. And has a midline at y equals 3. That means our k value is 3. So for 8, this is going to be y equals negative cosine x minus negative pi over 3. That double negative does turn into addition, and then plus 3. Okay, number 9, a sine function shifted down 6 units. Vertical shift is k. Since it's down, that'd be -6. With a period length of 4 pi. Okay, b equals 2 pi over the period. If the period is 4 pi, 2 pi over 4 pi, those pi's cancel out, and 2/4 reduces to 1/2. So our b value is 1/2. So this is going to be y equals sine 1/2 x minus 6. Okay, for 10 and 11, we are given graphs here. So we're going to have to look at the graphs closely to figure out what the parameters are. So starting with 10, it looks like our amplitude is 2. Well, first, let me backtrack. It depends, our equation depends on whether we use sine or cosine for reference. So for 10, we can think of this as a cycle of sine starting at pi over 4 and ending at 5 pi over 4. So we can use this to create an equation with sine. Okay, our amplitude would be 2. Our midline, 0. Our horizontal shift, let's see, halfway between 0 and pi over 2 would just be pi over 4. And then the length of one period, since we're starting at pi over 4 and ending right here at 5 pi over 4, that period would be pi. I'm going to drag this curly bracket. Notice that I can't move it for some reason. Anyway, I'm trying to drag it over to the x-axis so that you can see that it does go from just 0 to pi. So the length here is pi. And then to find the b value from the period, b is just 2 pi over the period. 2 pi over pi simplifies to 2. B equals 2. So my equation using sine as reference would be y equals 2 times sine of 2 parentheses x minus pi over 4. And then k is 0. We don't really need to add plus 0 at the end, so this is good. We can use cosine as reference here as well. Let me highlight a different part of the graph. Okay, let's say we're looking at this one cycle of cosine. My period is still pi. Okay, the length of one cycle is the same, it's just been shifted. My midline is still at 0. My amplitude is still 2. But now my horizontal shift is pi over 2, because that cosine cycle should be starting on the y-axis. So this equation is going to be y equals 2 times cosine of 2 times x minus pi over 2. So for number 10, either of these two equations would work. Or another one. Okay, this isn't the only possible, these aren't the only possible equations. You could look at a different part of the graph here, maybe a part with a negative amplitude, and then create an equation from that. Okay, last but not least, number 11. I'll zoom in here. The most obvious shape to me here would be the sine curve. So I'm just going to create a sine equation from this. Notice that we are going down to the minimum first and then up to the maximum. So our amplitude is going to be negative. In this case, it's going to be -3. Notice that the length of one cycle, aka the period, is 4 pi, because we're starting our cycle at 0, ending at 4 pi. The period, the b value is equal to 2 pi over the period. 2 pi over 4 pi equals 1/2. My midline is at 0. And my horizontal shift is 0 because, again, we are starting on the y-axis, so my equation is going to be y equals -3 sine 1/2 x. Again, you could look at a different part of this graph if you want to. You could maybe like extend it this way and look at a cycle of cosine, but this is good enough.